So welcome to Tech Chat number 30. I'm Dan, your host. If you like my videos, please hit the subscribe button and a little bell and get notifications of when I make videos. Today was a very special Tech Chat for me. It was my 30th podcast, and I had somebody on the podcast today that definitely epitomizes and loves freedom. And I'm not going to take too long with this introduction. I got to have a nice conversation today with Mr. David Icke on April 11th, 411. Information. I thought it was a synchronistic date. But without further ado, I'm going to go straight to the interview. I hope you enjoy it. Thank you. I'd like to welcome everybody to Tech Chat number 30. This is David Icke. No one needs introduction to this man. And how you doing, Mr. Icke?
I'm very good, mate. And yeah, it's 5 o'clock in the UK as we speak.
Yes, yes.
So it's fortunate you were there, really. Otherwise, we would have not met.
Yes, exactly. I'm very glad you took the time to meet me because, you know, like, who the hell am I? I'm some guy doing podcasts for America, and you actually took the time to, you know, out of your day to come on my show. You're the very first person I've ever interviewed on my show. So if I seem a little nervous to anybody, that's why I'm talking to David Icke, and it just happens like that. I know you don't feel like that, but a lot of people look up to you.
Yeah,
I look up to you. I look up to your courage.
The thing is, what you're doing is what's necessary to get the information circulating. So
Right.
to me, you're not just a podcast guy. You know, who's this guy? I don't see the world like that.
Right.
You are a means to communicate to everyone who will hear this, see this,
Right.
Information that they need to know. So, you know, we need more and more people like you, you know.
Thank you. Thank you.
I talk to everyone I can.
Outstanding. And, you know, they what they're doing in the world is they're deplatforming everybody. They're deplatforming people that are speaking the truth because they're afraid of you. And in that way, when you guys talk to us people that haven't been deplatformed in every way because they don't know us quite well yet, we're still getting it out there then. So that's kind of important.
Yeah, what we've done is start this media platform called Iconic, which has its own server.
Right.
Because we could see, my son set it all up, we could see that if this censorship was coming, it's only been going 2 years, it's been fantastically successful.
Right.
And of course, I've got davidicke.com as well. But in terms of the mainstream internet, that was gone for me in the spring of 2020 when I started talking about the C word, as they say.
Yeah, yeah.
So you have to find other ways to do it. And what we're seeing is so obvious. It's not funny because of the effect it has, but it's almost funny.
Yeah.
One of the things about these people that are involved in what I call the global cult that's behind all this, it goes back way back into history, is that they're incredibly bloody predictable. You know, that people think that they're kind of all knowing and all powerful. I mean, have you seen Klaus Schwab, you know, Bill Gates? I mean, these people are not impressive.
No.
They operate on the same theme of the playground bully who says, "My dad's bigger than your dad." That's
right.
all. They're only
right.
gophers.
Right.
And what is happening is so bloody obvious. I said a long time ago, decades ago, this was the plan in terms of information, that eventually they want no one to ever hear or see anything that the authorities don't want you to see or hear. They want every other view silenced. So they're doing it incrementally, and we have to respond to that. There have been some great responses with people setting up other video platforms and social media platforms.
Right.
But they're doing it incrementally. So if you go back, they started off YouTube, Susan Wojcicki, not a bloody gopher,
right,
psychopath, but gopher,
right,
and the people who own her at Google, and then the people that own Google in the cult, and Zuckerberg at Facebook, another psychopath, and what's happening at Twitter. So they started off in terms of YouTube demonetizing alternative media people.
Right.
So
Right.
instead of getting money for the number of views you got on YouTube, as everyone else does, they cut that, because what they're looking at is, look, this alternative media is a real bloody problem. So how do we dismantle it? Well, first of all, we've got to take its means to operate full time away.
Right.
So we'll demonetize it, and that was always going to be the first stage. And then they silenced the most blatant people, if you like, people like me. I won't censor myself. I just won't do it.
Yeah, I'll never stop talking as well.
Yeah, and so once I started talking about the COVID hoax and the fact that the PCR test was not testing for a virus, which is now, widely understood.
Right.
All these years later, I was
Right.
gone. I mean, I was gone immediately, and then these other platforms came along, and they, you heard people say, well, if you don't like being censored, they're private companies, they can censor you if they want.
Mentally ill is what they are. Yeah, they're mentally ill.
Then,
right.
is people start their own. And what's happening now, and it's happening in many countries, certainly happening here in the UK, they're introducing legislation to bring in a definition called harms. And this definition of harm does not have to be unlawful, and it does not have to be illegal.
Right.
The version of the legislation in Britain is called the Online Safety Bill.
Okay.
We have a fascist organization in this country called Ofcom, which regulates, i.e. censors, the broadcast media. And I tell you how fascist it is. It was started by Tony Blair in 2001. And what's happening with this online safety bill is they're giving Ofcom the power to decide if something can be posted or not on the basis of whether they believe, fascist Ofcom, that it could be harmful. And given that any information could be construed through, manipulation of reality to be harmful to someone, it means that they can target anything they like. And there's big fines and even jail terms for those that refuse to bow to the adults at Ofcom. So, and this is happening in Canada, it's happening in Australia. This is a global thing. So now what they're trying to do is target those other platforms that have and other means of communication outside the mainstream internet. And it's so predictable because they're heading towards this point, like I said a long time ago, where no one sees or hears anything that the authorities don't agree they can see or hear.
You know something, and this was something I was talking to yesterday. I talked to Mark Passio yesterday for a little bit, and I was on his show, and he's been doing this like 15 years. And I look at someone like you who's been doing it, for 30, and the courage and equanimity you showed on that talk show the one time. You actually, when they were like ridiculing you, you almost seemed amused by their ignorance. Like you were like amazed that you guys are this, you were fine with it. And the patience and equanimity you've had over the years to deal with this, to know the truth. And I'm beginning to know the truth. And I've had just 2 years into this, and man, it's aggravating. So like I commend you for how how long you've been doing this. I didn't start until 2019. How do you stay? Like I understand, like you said, and I really agree with this. Like once you know what's going on in the world, how can you walk away from it? And I've had 2 out of body experiences, near death experiences myself. So to say I'm afraid to die would be a lie. I'm really not. I did have some experiences to know that our souls go on, our consciousness goes on. So, but still it gets aggravating. We're all human, and it gets aggravating. So what kind of advice would you give to say somebody like me or anyone else who's only been doing this for 2 or 3 years, how you stayed in it for so long? Because I know we're not doing this for the money.
Well, I think it's there's a phrase in the, I don't quote the Bible very much, but
Right.
although I think there's a lot of really good stuff in there if it's read properly and not
Right.
if it's seen symbolically rather than literal. There's some really good stuff in there. But there's a line that is basically forgive them for they know not what they do.
Right.
I think that's an important point because I look at the wokers of today, the young generations of wokers, and obviously I challenge them. I challenge them on what they're doing. I mean, there was an interview on a radio station here last week with a woker from an organization called Just Stop Oil. And what they've been doing in Britain is stopping trucks leaving refineries, which has added to the fuel distribution chaos and availability,
Right.
which has, of course, been absolutely manipulated with the Ukraine situation used as the excuse.
Yes.
See Biden in your country. And so I watched this interview, and this lad, he was 21, had no capacity for free thought. He had absolutely no mind of his own.
Right.
And here we had a 21-year-old. If you can't rebel when you're young, when you're going to start,
Right.
Who was quoting official agencies and official sources in support of his case that oil should be stopped. And of course, they want the suppression of oil. That's what the human caused climate change hoax is all about, because they want to transform the global economy and global society. And that's a great way of doing it. If you can, increase the price, then the price of everything goes up. And,
right.
and B, if you can limit its availability, then you literally change society. So I looked at him, and it was very frustrating to watch. But then you think, well, he's come out of the womb 21 years ago,
right.
and his parents would have influenced his perceptions. And if they were, what we now call woke parents, well, he had a bad start.
Right.
And then he goes to school, and I was born in 1952. I'm just coming up to my 70th birthday in a couple of weeks, and so I went through school in the 1950s and the 1960s. I left school in 1967, and yes, they were trying to guide you into certain ways of seeing the world. Yeah,
right.
Not, oh my God, nothing like the scale of today,
right.
Where any lip service to education is all it is, because it's a programming operation. Now,
yes.
When J.D. Rockefeller in America started the American education system, which of course the Rockefeller gopher Bill Gates funds to a very large extent these days to specific ends, Common Core and all that.
Right.
He started it, and people that started it with him were open about this. Some of them, that
right.
They didn't want to produce rounded, educated people. They wanted gophers. They wanted artisans.
Right.
They wanted slaves, basically.
That's what they want. Again, they're trying to make us all slaves. I mean,
yeah.
that seems like what the main end goal is here with them. That's their end game.
Exactly that. I mean, the penny drops when you realize you're already a slave. That's the point. What they've done is hidden the slavery. We have open slavery, which we had in America, in Africa, etc., around the world, and still have today. It just takes a different form. I mean, tell people in Libya there's no slavery when they're having slave markets in the town square.
Yes.
But the slavery in the West has been much more hidden and subtle, well, until now. So they start off with this education system to turn people into slaves.
Right.
But what they've done as the decades have passed is they've wound it up and they've wound it up and they've wound it up. So in the 1950s and 60s, in my experience, it still hadn't gone that far. It was in there, but it wasn't that far. where it's gone in the woke generation era and to present day is absolutely fantastic. It's just morning to, well, school gate to school gate,
Right.
university day to university evening, uh, perceptual programming on a scale that would embarrass a mind control operative.
Right. Right.
The blatant nature of it. I mean, it's unbelievable. I studied mind control from 1996 when I really started getting into that when I was traveling around America.
Right.
And I studied it for years and years in great detail. And I mean, this is individual mind control. This is like MK Ultra.
Right. Yes, I've read about them.
But when you see what those techniques are and how they control the minds of individuals, and
Right.
then you look at the world, and you look at the COVID era, and or when the COVID era started and all the restrictions and all the the fear porn, it was MK Ultra on a collective basis, on a collective
Right.
level. So these kids are going to school every day to be indoctrinated, and it's real simple. Uh, when you look at the number of people in full knowledge who are driving this agenda of human control, and you compare the number with the numbers they're driving, the
Right.
nearly 8 billion population, the mathematics are ridiculous. They're laughable.
Yes,
It
they are.
shouldn't be possible.
Yes.
But it's possible because they target not physical control, because people, well, they're doing
They'll
some.
rebel again if they go too hard, too fast. People are going to rebel.
Yeah, but what they're looking for is not physical control, although they will do that if necessary. We saw that with Trudeau in Canada recently.
Right.
They're looking for perceptual control, because
Right.
then they don't need physical control, because the people do what the cult wants anyway. So it's your perceptions they're after, and we form our perceptions from the information we receive.
Right.
So if you want to control someone's perception, you control what they see and hear. This is what it's about. This is really the foundation of it all.
Yep.
Because from information comes perception, and from perception comes behavior. So if you look at the spring of 2020, the perception was accepted by enormous numbers of people globally,
Right.
that there was a deadly virus that they needed protection from. And so they weren't forced to go under house arrest called lockdown. They went willingly,
Right.
in fear of not doing it. There are only a relative few of us that said this is nonsense and we're not doing it. The vast majority of people did it, and they initially they didn't have to be forced to do it because their perceptions had been hijacked. And
Right.
so when you look at everything in this whole conspiracy with all its facets and different aspects, it comes down to one thing. They all have a psychological basis,
Right.
all of them. The target is the human mind and the perceptions of the human mind.
Right.
And that's why the education system, laughably called, is the foundation. Because what did the Nazis say? Give me the child to the age of 7 and I'll show you the man. Well,
Right.
they want longer than the age of 7. They want you through your entire formative years.
Right.
And so, if we go back to that lad on the radio show who was talking the most unbelievable garbage, and when he was challenged, he had no comeback because he's just repeating.
He's being a parrot. He's parroting.
He doesn't understand what he's talking about. He's done no research into the subject he's talking about.
Right.
He's just a repeater, which is what these wokers are. Now, you look at him now at the age of 21 after he's been through this. I mean, is he ever going to break out of that? I mean, it's possible. It's possible for anyone to break out of any level of programming in the end.
Right.
But is it likely that he's going to break out of that? And so what you've seen is you've got people buying the human-caused climate change hoax.
Right.
which is about transforming the world economy and human society.
Right.
And the same people were then the vehement zealots of the COVID era. You've got to wear a mask, got to have the vaccine, you killing people, right?
Right.
And then when the Russian invasion of Ukraine started, they moved to that.
That's just another diversionary tactic. It's like
they're just being told what to believe.
Right.
And this thing you see, this quote you see in the alternative media, which is very, very correct, which is basically what's the next thing, what's the new thing, what's the current thing.
Right.
But that's basically what it is. And just to finish, I heard a story from we have a supermarket chain in Britain called the Co-op. There's one just down the road from me here, and one of the staff at the Co-op one morning recently had a colleague come in dressed in blue and yellow, and she said to the colleague, "Why did you never come in dressed in the colors of Yemen?"
Right.
And the reply was, "Well, that's not in the news, is it?"
Right. Right.
So it's literally, people are being given their perceptions to believe, and they're buying it, and
Right.
that's why you will have seen this, of course, this tremendous now, like a chasm of difference
Right.
between those who are in that mentality and those who are not. It's just like we're living in two societies.
Yeah, there's with mind control, I don't think they realize to make it simpler, it's like watching a commercial. It's the power of suggestion. It's marketing. It's all, I mean, that's really what it is. And we're being bombarded from every direction. Like, I don't watch the news on purpose, but I still have to open up my internet browser. So something will still pop out at me that I find funny. Like they said, the last thing that I seen is they've now proven there's war crimes going on that Russia's committing. And I had to like chuckle because, excuse my language, but war is a fucking crime. The whole war is a crime. So of course there's war crimes. They're all been crimes against humanity. And I personally, I'm out of the law enforcement ranks. I got out of that cult. So I really am tackling this from a standpoint, how you say they are the few and we are the many. Let's not acquiesce. Yeah. Well, I'm trying to get through to my fellow ex-order followers, the cops, the military. Don't do their dirty work. Don't do it. Refuse to. Understand what's really moral and don't follow those orders.
Yeah, because what you're doing is you are taking the action.
Yes.
To change society, to enslave your own kids and grandkids. That's the point, as well as enslave yourself. And it's this. Again, this is part of the mind control. You will have, I'm sure, observed this. What is mind control? People think mind control, oh, that's very deep. Oh, no. It's controlling your perception of reality. So from that perception, you behave in certain ways. You get people in law enforcement. You'll get some who are psychopaths, and they do it because the psychopaths. I think a lot of psychopaths have been systematically recruited around the world for this specific period. But there are others who are decent people, but they're just terrified of stepping out and speaking out against authority. Their focus, I do completely understand, is what about the paycheck at the end of the month? But that's going to go anyway.
That's yes.
The way it's
in the New World Order, they're not going to have their jobs to begin with. So being an oath keeper doesn't mean being a job keeper, is what I keep telling people.
Yeah, and it's so people have to decide if they're going to do what they know to be right, or whether they're going to do what they think is right for them in the moment. And there's a tremendous difference in that.
Right.
So what happens is, if you're caught in the perception trap, then even if you don't want to do what you're doing, you'll go through a checklist of consequences for you of doing what you know to be right, doing what you'd actually like to do.
Right.
And the list eventually gets long enough for people to go, no, I can't do that. I can't do what I know to be right because the consequences for me.
Right.
And of course, what happens is that the consequences for me just compound, because not doing it is going to create even more severe consequences than the ones of doing what is right now.
Right.
And then you've got other people who've broken out of that program,
Right.
and said, no, I'm going to do what I know to be right. Because if I don't, then what I know to be right is not going to happen.
Right.
Because what you've got, and this will be in law enforcement, it will be everywhere, because it's the human perceptual breakdown. You've got those people that simply do what authority tells them because authority tells them.
Right.
You've got those that don't want to do what authority tells them, but they're too frightened not to do it, so they do it anyway. And those two groups of people have been responsible for every tyranny in history.
Yes.
You know, tyrannies are not imposed by the majority, they're imposed by the minority, the very small minority. And they come about through the acquiescence of the population, through either unquestioning obedience or fear of not obeying.
Right.
And so every tyranny in history, whether communist, fascist, whatever, has come about because those two groups of people, those two mentalities, perceptions, have acquiesced to authority. And then you've got the other group getting bigger and bigger as people see more and more of what's actually happening.
Right.
And they're the ones that have ended every tyranny in history because they won't acquiesce. And
Right.
if we go back to the mathematics of it, you cannot have a few controlling the many if the many won't acquiesce. Absolutely essential to the few controlling the many
Right.
is the many acquiescing to the few. And if you go back through human history and you see that this is the pattern throughout human,
I was just going to say that there's a pattern. It keeps
pattern.
repeating itself. Yes.
It's the
Yes.
entire pattern. So at some point, if we really do want freedom, as opposed to the illusion of it, even the illusion's breaking down now after the last 2 years, but
Right.
If we really want freedom, then that pattern, that blueprint of mass acquiescence to the few has got to stop. And
Right.
because it's a mind trick, the whole thing's a mind trick.
Yes.
The mind trick that authority has power. Authority's power is the power that people give to authority in the form of acquiescence. They don't
Right.
have any power. I mean, what power does Biden actually have as an individual, or Johnson, or any of them?
Right.
They have power because they are part of a network that manipulates the population to give their power to authority. And if you only see the second part of the feedback loop, it looks like authority has power. And that part of the feedback loop is authority imposing its will upon the population. What people don't see is the first part of the feedback loop, which is the population acquiescing to the authorities, which they then use that power, that acquiescence,
Right.
to cycle back against the people. So I don't look for solutions because I think that's a mug's game, really.
It's low hanging fruit.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's not solutions we need. It's to identify the cause of the problem.
Diagnose it first.
The cause can only exist because of, or the problem can only exist because it's caused by something. You take away the cause, the problem by definition must disappear, right, because its basis is gone. And how have the few controlled the many throughout human history? Acquiescence of the many to the few. And if people go on doing that in large enough numbers, then nothing is going to change.
And their ego will keep them in that state because they don't want to. It's very hard for people to say, "Hey, I was wrong about something." So, like, I see people ego identifying with their politics, and I'm an anarchist. I know what anarchism really means, but before I knew what it meant, I never voted. Here in America, I call them Demopublicans and Republicrats. They were all the same. They were taking turns being in power, but nothing ever changed.
I can't remember the last time I voted, mate. It's so far back.
Yeah, and like in the 80s, it seems like they were almost they came close to taking over the world in the 80s and failed. And then it seems like they spent the 90s with mass media mind control through sitcoms, through commercials, through obfuscation of gender, through everything that they could possibly do to really teach people what to think and not how to think.
Yeah, and the thing is that there's very simple things that show you what's going on and where this is supposed to go, and show you what you're meant to believe.
Right.
So that great quote that's attributed to Voltaire, the French philosopher, was to the effect that you know who controls you by who you can't criticize. Right. There's another aspect of that. You know where the world is being taken by what you can't criticize.
Right.
And so you look at the media in general. I'm not just talking about cable news shows or newspapers, I'm talking about the media in general. You've got, apart from people like Tucker Carlson, who challenges many things that others don't, and I don't say Fox News, by the way. I say Tucker Carlson, because I mean, you know, Sean Hannity, don't start me. And then you've got CNN and MSNBC and all. We've got the BBC here. Oh dear, don't start me on that either. And they're putting out the same story.
Right.
Then you go onto the late night chat show people, your Stephen Colbert's and all these other people, and they're giving you the same stuff. They're giving you the same narrative, and they are attacking, ridiculing, and demonizing anyone that is not on board with the narrative, who's questioning it, which is their basic human right.
Right.
So wherever you then you look, as we talked about, at the education system, the same narrative is being pounded out there every day.
Right.
The mainstream media in general is pounding it out, and so you know, people are only basically hearing, unless they go looking, one version of everything. That is perceptual control. If all you hear is one thing, you go into that mode, which is confirmation of the shutting down of your mind,
right,
where you say, everybody knows that, mate. No, everybody believes that because that's all they've heard, and that's very different.
Yeah, that they use repetition.
Yeah, repetition. So you look at what that narrative is in all its facets and forms, and you can see where the world's being taken. It doesn't take a genius. You can now see it because it's on public display. And so the challenge for those that can see it and starting to see it is not just to see it. It's not just to stand on the other side of the sidewalk of the road and look over at what's happening and say, yeah, this is going to happen next. I told you this would happen, didn't I? And all that. That's observing it.
Right.
We need to cease to cooperate with it. And when I look at, I say I'm not a Trump supporter is an understatement. To say I'm not a Biden supporter is an understatement of all human history. But the point is that if you look at what are called Trump supporters, they're overwhelmingly pushbackers. They don't want this crap.
No,
we may disagree about what they do want, but they don't want this crap.
Right.
So, according to the official figures, of course, the election most blatantly rigged. It's unbelievable.
Oh my goodness, yes.
I mean,
yeah.
I mean, do you think the election was rigged?
It's so easy. Like I really, I'm like, I don't know how to further explain this to people when I start telling them about what's going on in the world, and they don't get it because they can't run any thoughts through any other filters other than their religious politics.
Yeah, but if you look at the 74 million who's supposed to have voted for then what if 74 million cease to cooperate with the system, cease to cooperate with these diktats? I mean, it would be unenforceable on that kind of scale.
Right.
But see, this is why protests are great, because they show you visually public opinion and how people feel. But if
Right.
you walk away from the protest and just go on acquiescing between the protests, there's no point. There's no point at all. You're not going to change anything.
Right.
So the Trump thing is a good case in point. It's another version of what I call the savior syndrome, where
Yeah.
someone has to save me. So
Right.
you're looking for a savior. The last thing we need is an external savior. We need to take control of our sovereign self and our sovereign situation, and we have to be
Our saviors.
the point that makes the decisions. Not say, oh, what's Donald Trump going to say next? I couldn't care bloody less, frankly.
Right.
What I would like Donald Trump to have said, if he was genuine, is that Edward Snowden and Julian Assange were going to be pardoned at the end of his presidency.
He didn't do none of that. I think he played his part perfectly. I mean, it was a WWE clown show behind the scenes. Like, he knew what to do to get the left, mad. They were like, it was a fine dance between them. Like, I'm looking at this whole fine dance, and I was telling somebody, friend, that this isn't some 5,000 word, 5,000 piece puzzle. That's one of those real small puzzles that take you like a month to do. I'm literally looking at this like a toddler's big 7-piece puzzle, and it's boom, it's right there in front of in front of me, what's going on. I'm very interested in your work on like, I grew up in the 80s where I'd watch The Final Battle, right? And I'm literally waiting for these people to pull off their masks, and they're not even human. Like, I'm literally what you said about the Anunnaki, because I've studied the Anunnaki. I know we're jumping way into something else here, like totally, but to get to like what the end game is, I agree with you. There's something else pulling the strings here besides humanity.
Well, I mean, crikey, that's a deep one, and I could just go on adding dots and adding dots and adding dots infinitum on this one.
Right.
Let me tell you my story, maybe as a template for it. I had an amazing awakening. The top of my head blew off, basically. My bubble burst in 1991. And I suddenly started finding myself on an incredible synchronistic journey of walking into information, many and various kinds, in many and various countries. I've been to about 60 odd countries now. I saw in the early 1990s that there was a network that was running the world, and it wasn't what we saw, it was what you didn't see that was running it. And I call this today the global cult. And the way this operates is you've got a spider's web is just the perfect analogy. And at the center, you've got the spider, and the spider is the deep in the shadows orchestrator of the agenda. And then you've got each strand in the web coming out from the spider is a secret society, a semi-secret group, or organizations, corporations, governments, agencies that we see in the public arena, depending on what level of the web you're at. Right. So immediately around the spider, you've got the most exclusive secret societies. Then you come out, and most of which you've never heard of. Then you come out still in the hidden. Then you're hitting the secret societies we do know about, the Freemasons,
Skull and Bones, and
all that. Yeah.
That. Right.
And that's all these secret societies are everything's compartmentalized, so that you only the few in the inner core of these organizations actually know the real picture. And even they only know some of the picture, the inner core of the inner core. The spider is where they know the real picture. Right. So you come out, and then you meet a point on the web where the hidden meets the seen, what I call the cusp. And that is the Bilderberg Group, the Council on Foreign Relations, the Trilateral Commission, the Club of Rome that orchestrated much of the climate change hoax, set up in 1968 to do that. Right. And you have this explosion in the cusp point of these NGOs and non-governmental organizations and think tanks funded by people like Soros, and their job is to take the agenda from in the hidden, that ultimately comes from the spider, and to play it out into the world of the seen through governments, government agencies, media, corporations, banking systems, etc.
Right.
And so the woke agenda is actually the cult agenda. And this is why it's played out into the public arena, whereby all these corporations are all like Disney, all of them are all pushing the woke agenda. They're not pushing it because they care about transgender people. They couldn't give a damn.
Right.
Or black people. They couldn't give a damn.
Right.
But because it's the agenda that leads to the kind of world that they want. So I'd sussed that quite a very long time ago now. But then, the next question was, well, first of all, when did this start? And then you start to go back and you realize it goes into the ancient world and it's just got more and more expanded until it became global. But there's another thing is, I thought, well, okay, so all through the centuries, going back and back and back, people have been born, they played their part in advancing this agenda when in the perception of this world, they'd never see that agenda come to fruition, but they're pushing it on.
Right.
And then other people, they die, and other people come in and they continue through these families and these secret societies, which often work through families that they're in a core.
Same bloodlines that go all the way back.
Yeah. So
they're going back to
So I thought, well, who's orchestrating this?
Right.
You've got all these generations coming through the centuries and the decades, pushing this agenda on incessantly into this centralized global dictatorship. Who's orchestrating it? There has to be a common force which has orchestrated this. And that's when the synchronicity of my life started taking me into some very weird and wonderful areas, or less than wonderful, most of them. And, and I thought, well, if this is happening now, all right, yeah. So this ain't been happening for 5 years or even 50. So when did it start? That if you go back, there has to be evidence for it.
Right.
So I started going around the different cultures. I talked to Aboriginal people in Australia. I talked to the great Zulu shaman, Credo Mutwa in South Africa. I talked to Native Americans, all these different cultures. And I also talked to, over the decades, many insiders of the system,
right.
the intelligence military system, who were in it but didn't like what they saw. And what I found was an extraordinary correlation between what the two were telling me.
Right.
First of all these different cultures talk about a negative force manipulating human society. So if you look at Christianity, it talks about the devil, Satan, and it talks about the demons. You look at the writings of the Gnostic belief system, which were found in Nag Hammadi in Egypt in 1945 in an earthen jar, which go back to something like 400 AD.
Right.
And they talk about Yaldabaoth, which is their version of the devil, Satan, and they talk about archons, which is Greek for rulers, which is their version of demons. Then you look at the Chitahuri in the Zulu belief system, the children of the serpent, they call them.
Right.
And then you look at the jinn in Islamic belief, that's a force that's manipulating human society from the hidden. I was in New York once, and I was in a taxi going from the airport to the city, and we got chatting. And he was a Muslim taxi driver, and he said to me, "Well, what are you doing these days?" I said, "Well, I'm looking at something called archons and some writings of the Gnostic belief system in Nag Hammadi." He explained all that, and I explained what the Gnostics said about the archons, and he said, "That sounds like the jinn."
Sounds
Yes,
like the jinn.
exactly. These are different names and in different cultures for the same force.
For the same thing.
In the Native American culture, if you take the Cree tribal people in northern United States across into Canada, they talk about Wetiko.
Right.
Wetiko is basically the same thing. They describe it as a mind virus, because in the end, you can go back through form. You go back through reptilian form, human form, reptilian form, the form of what's called the greys of UFO folklore.
Right.
But in the end, why do they behave as they do? Why are they malevolent? Why are they benevolent? Why do they behave like that? We come back to the same thing. It's their perception. And where does their perception come from? Consciousness. Their state of consciousness leads to their perception, which leads to their behavior. So I kept going back because I thought, in the end, despite all these different, non-human forms that they take, especially reptilian, in the end, it has to go down to consciousness. And so you find that what Christians call the devil, Satan, that's a state of consciousness. Wetiko in Native American culture is a state of consciousness, a mind virus. And so in the end, the what's behind all this is a state of distorted, inverted consciousness, what people call evil, which I define as the absence of love. And that evil, which is a distortion, inversion, it's an inversion of love. That's why everything in this world that this cult controls, look at it, it's an inversion. Everything's inversion. So, for instance, just a simple thing.
Right.
We're sanctioning Russia to target Russia, when actually what they're doing by sanctioning Russia is targeting the West, targeting their own country, which is what the idea is. Everything.
Right. They're goofing on us right now. That's really, they're putting it right in your face. They're just goofing on us, like Omicron. It was moronic. It's funny what they're doing. Evil is the letters, you change them around. Life.
Yeah.
Life. So live
it. That's it. It's an inversion of live.
Right.
And you look at the Satanists, the Satanist organizations. What do? They invert their symbols. That's why the inverted pentagram, the inverted cross are symbols of this cult, because they are symbolic of this inversion. So everything's inverted, and so because of this state of consciousness, it itself is extremely limited, because evil has a limitation on its intelligence, because it's evil, because it's an inversion, because it's not connected to the greater reality, the greater consciousness, or not at the point where it's influenced by it, because it's in a completely different frequency state, because it's in a completely different consciousness state. Right. And if you look at evil, and you look at how this mind virus, Wetiko I'll call it, operates, it has no empathy. The whole concept of the psychopath actually is Wetiko. That's what is Wetiko, this consciousness that brought psychopathy into the world. Because if you look at what's called the Hare test, it's named after the guy who developed it, of psychopathic traits, top of the traits of a psychopath are lack of empathy, lack of compassion, the ability to lie on a scale that beggars belief. And the lies are based purely on, does the outcome of the lie help me, get me what I want?
That's all they care about.
So if you look at these traits of psychopaths, look at Gates, look at Fauci. Look at a guy in this country we've got called Christopher Whitty, the chief medical officer of England, who's driven so much of this stuff in the last 2 years. Look at Klaus Schwab. That you're looking at absolute psychopaths because they are expressions of this consciousness. Now, what they have to do to control humanity is to pull humanity's state of consciousness, state of frequency into theirs. Because once they can pull humanity's frequency, consciousness frequency, through perception into, and fear, which is
fear, shame,
foundation of this consciousness is fear, for reasons I go into in the books. It itself is in a state of constant terror, being found out, because it depends on us. We don't depend on it. We don't need it. It needs us, and it has to keep manipulating us to serve it and to feed it to our energetic state. Otherwise, it's the game's over. So what it's trying to do is pull humanity into the same frequency band that it's in, because then a frequency connection could take place, which is known as possession. You know, I've seen possessed people, and I've seen their body change, and I can explain in very simple terms what's happening and how that works. But it's not just like an exorcist movie shift of features that we call possession. Possession is simply the ability to connect with the consciousness of the target and feed that consciousness its perceptions. Now, when you think that even officially 95% of human behavior is subconscious, it comes from the subconscious. How does this system work? All of it is subconscious. They are, to a certain extent, they target your conscious mind, but they're not really after that. Primarily, they're after your subconscious mind. So there's subliminal things going on all the time, like all these symbols that they put around us. Symbols are the language of the subconscious mind, but not words, symbols, pictures. And therefore, they're accessing the subconscious mind. And what then happens is this filters through to the conscious mind, at which point the conscious mind thinks that it's having its own thoughts and it's coming to its own conclusions, when actually they've been put into the subconscious mind and just filtered through. This is where the 95% of human behavior is subconscious comes from. And so this is what's going on. The more they can get people in fear, the more they're pulling people into that band of frequency they're operating, and thus they can control the way these people think. They control through that how they behave. But if you open your heart, this is why this is not esoteric navel contemplating. It's frickin' physics. You open your heart and you expand your awareness. You open your heart to what we call love, which is complete misnomer in the human understanding of it. You go into other levels of frequency as a result of that, then they can't touch you. They can't make that connection. Therefore, those people can frickin' see it. And when we talk about people waking up, what are they waking up from? They're waking up from the mind prison. They're waking up from the 5 sense mind prison. They're waking up from the Watiko frequency band. And suddenly, why didn't I see it before? It's so bloody obvious.
Oh my God, that's where I'm at. Like, you're literally, that's where I'm at right now.
But why is that? It's because suddenly, the clouds have parted, the mist is cleared. You can see, because you've entered a level of perceptual frequency that's above the Watiko control band of frequency, and thus you can see what it's stopping you seeing. This is what's going on.
When I died, I had I was coming in and out of consciousness, and you know, I couldn't control my thoughts. I remember having regret for not doing things, which is one of the reasons why I'm doing this, because I don't want to, you know, when I'm on my deathbed next time, I want to be like, all right, I'm going to sing my death song. I did what I was supposed to do here. I did what God with a capital G told me to do and charged me to do. Otherwise, I wouldn't have gotten all these supernatural that I now call simply natural science. So I'm on my bed and this voice comes into my head and it says, only love and discernment will drive out hate and fear. Only love and discernment can ever drive out hate and fear. So you're talking about opening up that heart chakra and letting that love consciousness out. It's yeah, it was a very amazing experience for me when that happened. I was talking to a young man about it who was very conscious, 22 years old at the time, and that just hope, because he's can be a mentor to me in some ways. This guy's a very conscious human being, and I was telling him about all these different things I regret, and he said, he's like, "Did you ever regret love?" And I mean, I answered instantly, no, I regretted not loving more. And I think that's part of what we got going on in the world. What you're talking about is the lack of empathy is also, there's no love there.
Yeah, and if you look, keep going back to it, at the woke mentality, it's without empathy and it's without compassion. It
Right,
sets out to destroy its targets. There's no love there. The
right,
love has been filtered out. It's been programmed out. But you know, this thing about regret, we are what we are in any moment
right,
because of what we've experienced and what we have perceived as a result of the experience, not necessarily what we've experienced, because how many people have experiences and learn subtle from them?
right.
But those who have learned from experience and have their perceptions have changed due to experience, we are the sum total of our experience. So I look at my life, and I've had many challenges in my life, but I wouldn't swap any of them because I am what I am, not despite them, but because of them. So you are what you are now, and you're awakening to this because of what you've experienced. So there's really, in the end, nothing to regret,
No,
because what we regret is actually what's got us here.
right,
So, you know, you've had those experiences. I've not had a near-death experience, but I on one occasion in a Brazilian rainforest, or two occasions actually, in a Brazilian rainforest in 2003, I took a psychoactive potion, rainforest potion called ayahuasca,
right,
and I on the second night, I went into an altered state of consciousness where a very loud, powerful female voice, it took the form of, talked to me for 5 hours about the illusory nature of physical reality and the world in general. And the first thing it said to me right at the start was, all you really need to know is infinite love is the only truth. Everything else is illusion. And that has stood the passage of my life, because it becomes more and more obvious the more I uncover the scale of the illusion. I mean, we're not even in a physical world. That's the scale of the illusion. Um, Infinite love is the only truth. Everything else is illusion. And what we are experiencing is a manipulated, calculatedly manipulated illusion to hold us in perceptual servitude. And you know, I said just after the turn of the millennium, when only one other person I knew was even saying it or even talking about it, although he was seeing it different from me, a guy called Nick Bostrom at Oxford University at the time. But I said in after the return of the millennium that we live in a simulation, the equivalent of a virtual reality construct, and
right,
that the limit of the simulation at our level of it, because there are other levels, is the speed of light. And the speed of light is not the fastest speed. That's ludicrous. That's ridiculous.
right,
But is actually the limit, the vibrational limit, if you like, of this level of the simulation. And in the April 2021, Scientific American ran a story by some academic guy saying that the evidence seems to show that we live in a simulation, and that the limit of the simulation is the speed of light. And he related the speed of light to processing speed. See, this is the whole point. Once the waters break, you realize that you have to start with a blank sheet of paper,
Right.
because everything we've been told is a lie. I mean, everything we've been told by officialdom is a lie. Everything. What is that? What is a lie? It's an inversion of the truth. It's all
Right.
inversion. So what we call the laws of physics, they are the rules of the simulation. If you play, I haven't, I can't stand them, but if you play a virtual reality game, what you can do in that game is limited by the guy who's written the code.
Right.
You can only play the game according to the rules that's encoded into the game. That's the laws of physics. And that's why, well, God, you will have experienced this, my goodness, that when people leave the body in a near-death experience, they experience a very different level of reality, and thus physics.
It's like turning into another frequency. They're tuning into a different frequency. Yes.
Exactly. But as this guy pointed out in Scientific American, it doesn't matter what the codes of the game are. The game is always going to be limited by the processing speed of the game that you can access. You're going to be limited by that.
Right.
And he was relating the speed of light to the processing speed of the simulation. So that's the level, the scale of perceptual manipulation. Now, when you put all this together, the fact that it's some kind of virtual reality has been created to hijack our perception. But even within the virtual reality, they have to 24/7 keep pounding us to control our perception and program our perception all the time.
They're constantly putting in new program patches.
Yeah, they've had to create an education system, a media, social media, all this stuff to keep going. Even though they've got this virtual reality to hijack our perception, they have to do all this other stuff on top of that. What does that tell you? The power that we are, the power of our minds, our consciousness beyond mind, to create our own reality. They know that. It's when I say, as I said earlier, that these people are in a constant state of terror. You know, don't let anybody be deceived by this kind of arrogance and, you know, we're all powerful. Who are you trying to convince, Schwab? You or me?
Right.
And if they keep telling you they're powerful, then people believe it and give their power, and thus they become powerful because the people give them their power. But in fact, they're frightened little boys and girls in short trousers, because they understand the power of consciousness in its pomp and in its true nature. They have had to manipulate us to access and express a infinitesimal fraction of the power of our consciousness.
Right.
So you've got two worlds, one world of the population, and they are constantly, from cradle to grave, programmed through control of information. So they go through the education system, the media, and it's all about limiting the information, thus understanding that the population has. This other world is the cult. And I'm talking about the inner core levels of the cult, not Bill and Joe down the bloody lodge.
Right.
And what they've been doing is passing on knowledge of the simulation. What does Elon Musk say? I think we live in a simulation. Because you
Yeah.
bloody know, you
Because
liar.
he knows exactly.
He
And he's
knows.
not a hero. People
No,
think he's
he's
like,
not a
oh
hero.
God, he's a big villain. Like people
You
can, I can
think,
see right through it.
oh, he's bought shares in Twitter. He cares about freedom. Oh, come on.
Oh yeah,
Every company he owns is serving the agenda in a very fundamental way.
right.
So, but that's what they do. They pass it on through the secret society network. And what's passed on is where the world's being taken. So people think that the steps to take them there are random and not connected. But the other thing that fundamental to this control, don't let the people know the nature of reality and the true nature of themselves, but pass it on through the secret society network. So what they've done, I've said this many times, it's so appropriate that one of the key symbols of the cult is the single eye, which you see on the dollar bill at the top of the pyramid, and the reverse of the Great Seal, of course. And that's very symbolic because they are the one-eyed man.
Right.
In the kingdom of the blind, the one-eyed man is king. Because what they've done is make humans blind.
Right.
That's what they've done. This is the dynamic. This is why this is a level of knowledge the public's allowed to see. This is the level of knowledge that's passed on through the cult secret society network. Now, what people like me have been doing over the years is uncovering this and passing it on to people to make of it what they will. And of course, the chasm between that and this is so vast that this overwhelmingly goes, I know from that.
Right.
Oh, you're mad, mate. You're insane. You're a conspiracy theorist.
That's conspiracy theorist, and then they want them out. They want to ridicule you. They want to joke on you and say you're a flat earther and all this stuff.
What they've done is created such a chasm between what is and what the public thinks is.
Right.
That the public just dismiss what is because they can't comprehend something so vastly different to what they've been told is.
Right.
But what's happened is in the last 2 years, particularly, is as more and more people have had this put in their faces. Because I said years ago, there's going to come a point where these people can't hide it anymore.
Right.
Because if you are manipulating under the radar to transform human society in a completely different way to what people are used to,
right,
there comes a point where you're going to have to break the surface, and people are going to have to see it. Now we're there now, of course, and so what they've started doing is they've moved from hiding mode, because can't hide it anymore if they're going to make it happen,
right,
to sales pitch mode, to selling it. That's just what Schwab and his Great Reset and all that stuff is all about. This is why Ray Kurzweil at Google is coming out with we're going to connect the human brain to AI and all that stuff.
Yeah.
Because they can't hide it anymore. So now they're sales pitching it. We'll become gods. No. You'll become post-human morons. That's what we'll become.
Right.
Our own, except the one you give us. So this is the dynamic that's been going on. And so we're back to censorship. They have to censor and to a certain extent, or to a large extent, it's not that they're censoring because they're powerful. They're censoring because they're weak
and scared.
Because they have to stop this this process of what that has hidden being passed to the public.
Right.
They have to break it. This is what the censorship's all about. They're doing it from a point of weakness because they know if we had an open public discourse and a free debate, game's over for them.
Right.
You look at Anthony Fauci. Take him. Someone ought to. Somewhere with bars around it.
Right.
But take him. You put medical professionals who've seen it, and you put scientists who've seen it around a table with Fauci, he wouldn't know where his next word's coming from.
Right.
The only way that Fauci can survive is softball interviews, avoiding any interviews where he's going to be really challenged,
Right.
and for the system to have his back. He can't survive on his knowledge
Too
or
many
his,
contradictions in his in the narrative. Actually,
can't
it's
do
it's
it.
just
He
yeah.
can't do it. So this is why if you can't win the debate, they know they bloody can't any of it, then don't have it. And that's what that's what the cancel culture is all about, which is being
Right.
driven by what? The woke mentality, which is a creation of the cult.
They don't want you know because we see our history and we see we're repeating the history. God forbid we might start to see a pattern. Figure something's going on.
Yeah.
And they don't
A
want
lot
us
of
to.
people are, of course, as you well know. They
Yeah.
they are now seeing the pattern,
Good.
and more
I
people
mean,
are.
if I'm seeing it, they got to be seeing it. Other people, I'm not. You know, I joke around about when I was in the Marine Corps. I was in the infantry, and you know, I was a E3. I was a Lance Corporal, 19, 20-year-old Lance Corporal, specialized in beer and strippers. And I'm sitting here looking at, you know, guys like General Mattis, who more than likely were read in on something because he totally just stepped out and said, "Hey, wear your mask on that commercial." And I'm like, he just traded on humanity, or that's not actually him. So like, where are our higher intelligence officers in the military? It's like crickets, nothing. They're
What they've
stepping
been doing,
down.
what they've been doing for decades. I've been charting this in the books. They've been putting morons and psychopaths in the positions of power. So, because it's all psychological.
Right,
So, there have always been morons in authority. Of course, they have.
right,
But on the scale they are now, at the scale of the last 2 years, people in political power, in health power, the level of moron is just shocking.
right,
Why? And note too that these morons like Newsom in California, like Trudeau in Canada, like Macron in France, and Ardern in New Zealand, and Morrison in Australia, etc. Um, they're the people that have gone through this Klaus Schwab leaders school and then gone out to become these leaders in this in this crucial period we're talking about.
right,
And there's a reason they want morons in power. A, because morons are just pliable because they're morons.
right,
But also it's psychological because what they're after, so we become one of the other two parts of humanity, those that follow without question and those that do it because they're frightened they're not doing it.
right,
Those two groups of people have given away a crucial foundation part of their psyche, self-respect.
right,
Once you give self-respect away, you've got nothing left but submission.
right,
And so what they're after is our self-respect. So if you look at the psychological basis of the last 2 years, it's been moronic people telling the population to do moronic things.
right,
Follow the science. Well, when you start, we'll have a chat because I can't see that you're following it now. You're making
right,
it up. Of course, they're making it up. So, do moronic things, says a moron. Now, someone with self-respect says, you are going to laugh, right?
right,
I'm not doing that.
right,
You know, I've seen people, big blokes,
right,
walk to a restaurant cafe door in England, put their bloody face diaper on, walk 3 strides to a table, sit down, and take it off
take it
again.
off. I've seen it in yoga classes.
And
Same
then
thing. You got to your
it's
mat,
unbelievable.
you wear it. They want you to wear it, and no, it's
No, it's unbelievable. It's
yeah,
unbelievable. People say to me, "You got to wear a mask." Well, well, you're going to have a long wait, mate. No
right,
chance. I'm not doing it because that's what self-respect does. Self-respect won't compromise. Otherwise, it's lost its self-respect.
right,
And so all the whole thing's psychological. And you know, you take Britain as an example. And it would be the same around the world. In Britain they have something called the Behavioural Insights Team, which is part owned by the UK government.
okay,
And they have another organisation called SPI-B, and these are psychologists who are driving and have been driving for 2 years these COVID restrictions,
right,
like the masks, like social distancing, like you can't see your granny, don't hug anybody,
Right.
lockdown. They've driven all these things because it's psychological. The whole basis of it's psychological. And that's why we've seen such a fantastically horrendous psychological effect on the young
Right.
as a result of the last 2 years, and psychologically affect on adults as well, because that's what it was meant to be.
Yeah, it's a COVID syndrome anxiety disorder or something that's an actual disorder now from it. And
I heard someone talk about people being COVID trained, and that's exactly what they've been done. They've been COVID trained, and that's why the COVID trained have reacted exactly to press enter input
right.
over Ukraine and Russia.
Unbelievable. And you know what? That's I think having guys like our current elected officials in office is just another slap in the face on that self-respect. Because hey, this is, and we got President Biden in office, and you can't get much more moronic than that guy. And
you've really hit it on the head there. That's exactly what I'm talking about.
Yeah,
you've got an obviously senile president,
right,
and a deeply corrupt one. You've
right.
got a ludicrously bloody moronic vice president in Kamala Harris.
Right.
That is eating away at the self-respect of the American people, even though
right.
many of them won't know that.
I think even on a subconscious level it is.
Yeah.
Even if they don't realize it.
Yeah.
And I also wonder where's I worked at a low-level government medical facility, so I watched doctors lie. I mean, it's nothing new for me. Where are these dark psychologists are pulling the strings and telling these politicians how to go about getting what they want? Well, where's the psychologists that actually have some morals? Why I haven't heard enough of them coming out and saying this is the trick they're playing on you guys.
Yeah, well, there's a tiny few compared with those doing the other thing,
right?
And they of course only get platforms in the alternative media,
right?
But in terms of the effect on self-respect, imagine, well, you don't have to, but imagine you're in the American military and you've gone through all the training and you've maybe gone through some horrific experiences in conflicts, and you look up your hierarchical chain and you see Milley and Austin. Imagine you see those two, defense secretary and the head of the uniform head of the military.
Right.
I mean, what do you think? Wait, I'm being officially led by those two pair of prats.
Yeah, they're going to inspire real courage, aren't they?
Yeah.
No.
Well, you've got the uniform head of the military more concerned about someone's bloody gender. This what's the name? Rachel Levine.
Yeah.
Suddenly gets a bloody military freaking title. Why have you got this title? Why are you got this position in the health department? Well, of course I'm transgender. Well, but that's not a reason. That's
right.
a decision. That's a lifestyle choice, which you have every right to make.
Right.
But you shouldn't be given a job in the government and the military, or a position in the military, or a title in the military, because you're bloody transgender.
Right.
It's just ridiculous. But
they want to obfuscate everything, and they invert everything, like you said. It's amazing to me.
And they bully people. This is the second group. The second group.
Yes.
They bully people into complying. And this third group, the ones that refuse to concede their self-respect, they're the ones that say this is bloody nonsense. Lisa Thomas is a man. He's got dangly bits. He should not be swimming in contests against women, because that's cheating, right?
Right.
And it's this tells you something, okay? So the sporting authorities, like the swimming authorities, they put you through drug tests, and if you've got a tiny bit of drug found in you, which they say is performance enhancing,
testosterone,
you get banned.
right?
But come in with a male body with greater muscle mass, bone density, lung capacity, and swim against women and destroy their sport as a competition.
Right.
And that's fine. Why? Because it's the agenda. It's what the cult want.
Right. It's scary that so many people are asleep to it, and it's at the same time I have faith with what I'm seeing, because more and more people are awakening. More and more people are starting to not have any of this anymore. They're like, we're not going to have it. More and more people don't want to acquiesce. They're getting I'm sorry about that. They're getting COVID tired. They're getting tired of the whole thing. They're getting tired of listening and following orders.
Yeah,
people are getting tired of it.
This is a very good point, because I've been doing this for so long. I remember what it was like in 1990, 91, 92, 93, 94, 95, on and on it goes.
Right.
And I compare that with now. So when people who are kind of relatively new to this, by comparison, they look at it and they say, why aren't more people waking up? And I'm thinking, you should have been with me in those years, mate. I couldn't fill a phone box with interest, a phone booth. But I have that breadth of experience to compare what's happening now with, and the awakening numbers now, and not only the awakening numbers, but the type of people who are seeing it is a scale beyond anything that's gone before, and we've got to go on adding to this.
Yes, yes.
The more that do, especially, what I find is interesting now is you're just starting to see it filter into the mainstream a bit, in terms of I've seen Australian politicians recently. And funny enough, I'm going to be interviewed by one tomorrow.
Okay.
Who has seen the light.
Good.
In terms of what's going on, and he's speaking out against it. I've seen about two others as well in Australia. I've just seen, funny enough, it's Australian examples I've seen this week.
Right.
I've seen an Australian sports show, a mainstream, that suddenly another sportsman had a heart problem,
right.
Post jab and all this stuff, and they started talking about it. Well, there has to be some kind of investigation, because this is it's obvious that there's something going on here, basically.
Right.
And it's starting to filter in there, because it's becoming more and more blatant and more undeniable. And even if you don't know how the whole thing fits together, even individual things that are happening are like very strange to people.
Right.
And so, we are starting just to filter a bit into the mainstream, because going back to what we talked about earlier with law enforcement, intelligent people in the system, not the inner bloody core, but,
right.
Intelligent people within the system with some intelligence will be looking at this and going, well, hold on a minute. Where this world is going, I'm going to have to live in. My kids are going to have to live in. My grandkids are going to have to live in, well, even more severely than adults today.
Right.
So, can I really just stand by and watch it any longer? So
no, you can't.
It's going to get. They are going to fire challenges ours like machine gun fire in the period we're going into. They're going to, because what they want, I've heard it called future shock in the past. They want you hit by so many different things.
Rapid dominance is what they call it in the military.
Rapid dominance, yeah.
Rapid dominance.
Before you've reacted to one, there's another one happening.
Boom, boom, just like that. There's no breath in between.
That's what they're going to do in terms of the war on our emotions and our psyche. And we just have to be strong, and we have to be calm, because if you stay calm, your mind works better. You can see things. Your relationship to time changes when you stay calm. When you panic, everything seems to happen.
And they want to keep you in that reactionary mode, because they can control you then with fear. And if you take that time to make conscious conscious instead of reactions, but respond consciously.
I mean, you will have come across so many psychological military operation techniques that
I've been on both sides of it.
You're seeing them played out in the population now.
That's why I was saying earlier, where were the people that are definitely were higher ranked than me? Why, you know, but some of them are speaking out, like you said, and I really do believe there's hope, because this tool that they're using for bad purposes, we're using for good purposes. And you know, I could probably keep you on here talking to you all day, but is there any last things you want to say, Mr. Icke, that just to inspire anybody watching this? Any last words?
Well, for me, you know, the key is self-identity. And when we talk about removing the cause of the problem, I'm always trying to, or I'm always pursuing an understanding of what they want us to be, because that tells you who you really are, and it tells you how you remove the cause of the problem. And the foundation of human control is to get people to self-identify the I with the labels of a human life. I am ours, I call them. I am
Right.
a man, I am a woman, I am this race, this sexuality, that sexuality. I am this religion, whatever. Because they are all labels and facets and perceptions of the five senses. And the five senses, which directly allow us to interact with this, what I say is a simulation, that's only a very minor, low level of the true I, which is
Right.
consciousness, infinite consciousness, having a human experience. And the consciousness we're accessing, thus the understanding, insight, awareness, knowing that we're accessing, can be the size of a pea, the five sense alone perception of everything, or it can be infinite in nature. And those two self-identities, or those two states of consciousness, fundamentally dictate whether we are slaves or whether we're free. Because the only way this cult can control us en masse is by putting people in that five sense mode where we are in this world and of it. All our perceptions are of the five sense world. And therefore, that limitation of self, I am just the 70 and 10 and all that stuff,
Right.
limits the amount of consciousness that you're actually accessing, because your limitation of self-perception and identity becomes a limitation of, expresses itself in the limitation of accessing consciousness. You become a mirror, an expression of your perceptions. So a little me perception will live a little me life.
Right.
And a little me perception will do what authority tells it because it believes it's little me, because it believes it's limited. And if it believes it's limited, the consciousness it's accessing within the infinite field is subsequently limited. But when you change your self-identity to I am all that is, has been, and ever can be, having a brief experience called human, and these labels of a human life are not my I, they are my experiences of my I, then
Right.
the whole thing changes. And that expansion of self-identity automatically, by definition, expands your awareness into greater and greater swathes of consciousness. And the more that your self-identity becomes infinite in nature, the more of infinite consciousness you're accessing. And
Right.
that's the worst nightmare of this cult.
You don't want that.
That its target population starts to access consciousness beyond the five sense prison cell. And that's why it has to keep us in there. That's why it has to control information, which will not inspire people to realize there's more to the I than they think. And so this self-identity is the revolution. It is awakening. That's what awakening is. It's awakening to a greater swathe of consciousness, a greater um, perception of the eye of
What they're
self.
afraid of, we're all gods. That's what Jesus said. All of you are gods.
Yeah,
Because people, not to be get religious, but because Jesus wasn't a Christian. Jesus was Jesus. He was an awakened man like you are, and or like many people hopefully keep awake. And that's what he meant when he said, "You're all gods. We're all gods." If you can get to that level of consciousness, and even back then, they didn't seem like they wanted that.
no, well, there's another line in the Bible. There are many mansions in my Father's house. I think is the words to the effect of.
Right.
Not just the different levels of frequency, different levels of reality. We are, if you like, experiencing through the five senses one mansion, actually a very manipulated mansion, in the greater whole, and
Right.
it's an infinitesimal. This world that we're in is an infinitesimally small band of frequency. It's ludicrously small. People only would look at the evidence. I mean, if you take the mainstream science perception of the electromagnetic spectrum, which is basically this simulation. That's what it is. It's electrical, electromagnetic. That's why the body works electrically. That's why the universe is electrical, actually, electromagnetic, because
Right.
it's simulation. And so, according to mainstream science, the electromagnetic spectrum is 0.005% of what exists in this, what they call the universe.
Right.
And some say it's as high as 0.5%, but it's tiny. And visible light, which is the only band of frequency that we can see, is a smear of the 0.005%. So humans are basically blind. Now, the reason that we can only see that tiny fraction of frequency is because that's all the body decoding systems can decode. Now, if you go deeper into the sons of God who interbred with the daughters of men,
Yes.
and
Yes.
the manipulation of us genetically, I say that our ability to see such a tiny, laughably small band of visual frequency is not an accident. It's by
See,
design.
I think psychics can see a little bit more than that, which is why they're psychic. Because I've experienced psychics who are very gifted and knew things, like they're seeing time, future, present, past, all at once. It seems like they're able to see things we can't see. It's amazing to me, actually.
Well, this is you see, this is the time. Time is actually a wonderful example of the scale of the illusion. There is no time. There is
Right.
only the infinite now. Now, to the five senses, that's what there's got to be a past, a present, and a future. Because I
Right.
lived in the past, and now I'm in the present, and then there's the future. What do you mean there's no time? Time is a decoding, an encoded aspect of the simulation that gives us the perception of time, because that then gives us the perception of aging, it gives you the perception of limitation, etc. But I would say this to people who say that they've got to be past, present, and future. Where are you when you experience the present? And they'd say, well, I'm in the now. Okay. So where were you when you experienced what you call the past? When you experienced it, you were in the now. Where will you be when you experience the future? You'll be in the now. There is only the now. The perception is of past, present, and future. The reality is there's only one now in which everything happens. And then through what we call memory and future projection, we create the past and the future in the sense that we believe in it, when actually past, present, and future only happen in the now. It's all happening.
It's amazing.
And yet, what is one of the greatest controllers of humanity? Time. All time, all the time. What's the time? Oh God, time's flying. All time's going so slow. It's all a perceptual reality, not an actual real reality.
And people have destination addiction. They have the time. They want people to have that destination addiction to get to the next thing, just to be occupied with other things that other than what's actually really important.
What was it John Lennon said? Life is what happens to you while you're busy making other plans.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Well, hey, Mr. Icke, I want to thank you for being here today. And I will put in the links down below, I'm going to put your websites to your latest book, A Renegade Mind. I think that's going to inspire a lot of people because we need people with renegade minds. And I'm glad that you do what you do. Thank you so much for what you do. And hopefully I can talk to you soon.
Yeah, well, thanks for all you do as well.